This is the IDP After Show.
Hello and welcome to the IDP After Show with me, Jase Abbey. I'm back to bring you another IDP Preview episode as we look forward to what Week 12 has in store for some of these key defensive players on our fantasy radar. Each week, as you know, I'm joined by some of the biggest and best analysts in the IDP space. This week is no different as I welcome Jon Glosser, senior writer, ranker, and IDP director at Dynasty Nerds. Jon, that's a mouthful. It's a pleasure to have you with me today. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you, sir. These intros are a little rough. Like they're building me up so big here, so I gotta make sure I deliver. But really appreciate you having me on. This is the first time that we really get to kind of chop it up and talk IDP together in this kind of space. So I'm very excited.
As am I. Let's do this then. So, in a minute, we're going to talk about four linebackers, 4 defensive linemen, and 4 defensive backs. These are the guys that we're going to predict either going to be hitting big or huge miss for those IDP managers in Week 12. But before we get into that, Jon, let's touch on a fun IDP storyline. I always do this. Scott Soltis and I talked about the defensive Rookie of the Year race a few weeks ago, but with you I want to chat about the defensive MVP race. We're in Week 12 now, so the voting panel's seen, I guess, 2/3 of what they're going to be basing their votes on. Currently, TJ Watt is the bookies' favorite. Is he deserving? He's been impactful, I think. It's been a good year for him, but by his standards, it could be argued that it's not been his best year, not as good as last year, for example. But really, who else can challenge him? Where's your head at on this?
Trey Hendrickson's the one, right? Like just an absolutely phenomenal year coming out of him. You don't see it as much, I want to say, on the defensive side of the ball where it's, the MVP award turns into this what team has the best record type of stuff. So obviously Hendrickson's going to be faulting in that department, but the production's insane. I want to say like 4 or 5 games with at least 2 sacks, and then obviously that 4 sack game that was just kind of legendary on its own. I think a dark horse name, and I know he won't win it, but a guy who I think really is like, a huge piece is Andrew Van Ginkel going to Minnesota. He's having an unreal season, 8 sacks. I want to say 2 pick sixes, maybe a forced fumble or a fumble recovery in there, if I remember correctly. So that's a guy from a dark horse standpoint. But we've seen this in the past where it does seem to be a little bit when Aaron Donald was running away with it, that it seems to be a little bit of like favoritism or who everyone wants to turn on the TV and watch the most. And TJ is definitely that guy right now. So can't argue if he gets it, but I'm in agreement with you. I don't think this year will, with 4 or 5 games left, whatever it is, I don't see him repeating last year's, at least from a sack total number. But yeah, I think this would be a year that'd be a little bit more deserving to give to somebody else, but I'm not gonna, he's probably the best defensive player in the game, so I'm not really gonna be too upset if he wins it.
Yeah, I like that call with AVG, by the way. It seems that players like him, because they're not as trendy, big names as people like, Watt and, Donald in years past, Myles Garrett, they just seem to not stand much of a chance, I think. But wouldn't it be great to see someone like AVG just come through and win it? That'd blow my mind. Be ace. But, yeah, I'm with you. Looks like it's going to be TJ Watt. Yeah, it'd be nice for him to get it, I think. There's been other years when you could argue that he's maybe deserved it and hasn't got it. So even though he's not having his best year, it's still a very good year. And it would be nice just to see him get it. Kind of deserving in that sense, I suppose. But Jon, are you ready to dig into these nominations of ours? We've got quite a few to get to. So why don't we kick things off with our linebackers? You're my guest, so you'll go first. Tell me which linebacker you think has a shot to come up big in Week 12 and why.
I've been on the Anthony Walker train for a few weeks now. I know they ended up benching and then cutting David Long, so he's not a factor there anymore. But Walker with 29 tackles and an interception over the last 3 weeks. Favorable matchup this week. Patriots allowing at least the great John Mack usually gives us that tackles per game assist, kind of cheat sheet there. But going into
Yep.
week 11, they were the second most allowed second most tackles to the position. Um, he's just been producing. I don't see a scenario where he doesn't. I know they brought in Dotson, but I think it's going to be a little bit before he gets up to speed, or Walker's going to have to kind of struggle to a point where he's benchable at that point. But him and Jordan Brooks have been solid and look like a tandem that we haven't seen in Miami at the linebacker position for quite a while.
Yeah. Walker's a good shout. I brought him up last week. The only concern I had then, and I'll raise it again now, I guess, is the addition of Dodson. I said at the time last week that Walker could still feature heavily because Dodson hadn't had much time to settle in. I think he arrived on like the Wednesday and was obviously playing on the weekend. And the idea that he could get up to speed in just a couple of days seemed unlikely, but it was enough of a concern for me to suggest maybe playing the waiting game with Walker. Obviously, my concerns weren't justified because Walker came out and played near every down. So I guess my question really, or my concern would be, has Dodson got up to speed a little bit now? Are we going to see him eat into Walker's snap share a little bit? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I doubt many people do outside of the Miami team facility, right?
Yeah. It's we play a "What have you done for me lately" game, and Anthony Walker's done some good stuff for us lately. So I guess just like a running back by committee, ride the hot hand until proven otherwise.
Yeah, fair point. And he has been playing. We talked about, Josh and I talked about how he was kind of just a guy as a player, but he has been playing well lately. He's one of those guys that just seems to have got a little better as he's got up there in age, unlike myself. But hey, there you go. So, my first nomination is going to be another veteran. It's going to be Jordan Hicks. Used to play with Walker, obviously, for a short time. He's kind of struggled with injuries this year, as he seems to pretty much every year. Had the elbow infection, then I think he broke his ribs. Ultimately ended up missing like 5 games. Regardless, he practiced in full last week and returned to play an every down role in the absence of JOK, who's on IR, obviously. Now, Hicks only managed kind of modest production, six tackles. But he should do better this week against the Steelers. They have allowed top 3 tackle volume to opposition linebackers, looking at the cheat sheet of John Macwiz that you alluded to. And that trend kind of continued last week against the Ravens, even after Roquan Smith exited with a hamstring injury. I think even at like 32 years old, a healthy Hicks, I think, can deliver in a matchup like this for the Browns and his IDP managers. So I recommend that if you have him, and unless you're loaded with studs at linebacker, you insert him into your lineups and you profit. Where's your head at on this one, John?
Yeah, these guys, these Jordan Hicks and Demario Davis types, right? Like they're around forever, and they're going to give you that solid tackle floor, so you don't ever have to worry about that. And you're really like one impact play away from them being a 20-point linebacker, helping swing a matchup into your favor. So, I love the call out here. Really. Quick, just shout out to JOK. Like, really hope that dude ends up playing football again. It's definitely a sad scene in the game, and didn't really think it was as serious as he was getting carted out. But I know there was some news this week about really praying for that dude to hopefully be able to play again. So, but yeah, that Browns linebacker situation has been an absolute dumpster fire for years for IDP managers, where you just can't seem to find a consistent guy. Hicks going in there, the tackle floor, the positive matchup. Yeah, I love it. I'm with you on this one.
Come on, Hicks. I've got him in quite a bunch of places, so I'm hoping that he comes good for me this week. But yeah, echo your thoughts on Owusu Koromoa. You hate to hear that kind of stuff, and you just want to see him back at some point. So yeah, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. So which linebacker do you think is going to be a dud this week, John?
Divine Deablo is the one that I have. This Raiders defense, I mean, obviously at linebacker it's Robert Spillane or bust, obviously, as we know, but Diablo's been kind of playing good in spurts, but it seems like Antonio Pierce is just ready to just keep shaking it up until he finds somebody. Unfortunately, behind Deablo is just a bunch of just a guys, a lot of those guys. So
Yeah.
I think Amari Burney ended up playing like a career high in like 13 snaps last week. I think they have Masterson there and Eichenberg too. Like those guys are not anything special, but watching Deablo's snaps dip, I tried to look and see if there was an injury. I couldn't find any, so I don't know if it was just a matter of playing the Dolphins and you obviously can't keep linebackers on the field. But one thing Deablo has with the converting from safety in college is he has the speed to play. So it would have been a little shocking that he wasn't on the field as much, seeing his snap count dip like that. And then a real tough matchup with the Broncos, third fewest tackles per game to the position. So don't love him this week. He's not a guy I would typically go after anyway. He's more of like a depth stash on your roster, but with a couple heavy hitter teams on the bye that have some solid linebackers, you're definitely searching this week. So being able to find somebody that can help produce, like I said, Deablo's been kind of on that fringe of at least being a formidable bye week replacement after last week, and given the matchup, I'm fading that one.
Yeah, I'm right there with you with Deablo, and it's frustrating because even when it feels like even when the snap volume was there, his tackling efficiency rate 9.07, looked it up, ranks 99th out of 105 linebackers who have played a minimum of 100 snaps. That's pretty damn terrible. And when you combine that kind of inefficiency with the reduction in the snap share and the poor matchup that you mentioned, it doesn't look good for his outlook. So I'm well avoiding Divine Deablo. Don't think he's a very good player. And yeah, hasn't been producing even when he's had the opportunities. And now he's not getting the opportunity to the same extent, or there's that concern that he might not, given what happened last week. Yeah, count me out. Count me out. So I was thinking of talking about my linebacker dislike is Jack Gibbons. He lost his role to Jerome Baker, but that seemed way too obvious. So I pivoted to Mack Wilson. He has been seeing, like Deablo, I guess, enough volume to make him an LB3 at least. His snap share has been between sort of 79 and 92% since week 3, but he's also, again, like Deablo, horribly inefficient. 9.59, ranks 97th out of 105 linebackers. That, of course, means his production has been woeful too. He's had a couple of solid games earlier in the year, but he's only managed 13 tackles in the last 4 games. And if that wasn't enough, I think, John, of a reason to sit Wilson, his matchup is also pretty horrible this week too. The Seahawks have allowed the fewest tackles to opposition linebackers, and that continued last week as Fred Warner and Devondre Campbell kind of disappeared, combined for only 11 tackles, despite the fact that both played every down. So, I mean, most weeks IDP managers wouldn't consider starting a guy who hasn't been productive over the last month anyway, but I kind of felt justified in mentioning Wilson because we've got 6 teams on a bye. So IDP managers are going to be scrabbling around to try and find anyone to plug into those gaps to start in their lineups this week. So I want to mention Wilson as somebody who you should try and avoid, even if you are a little bit desperate, and unless you've got no other options really.
Yeah, I'm glad we're on the same wavelength with that one of, kind of like we know people are going to be scrambling this week. You got some high producers on the bye. So, Mack Wilson's a guy that I have a lot of shares of, and it seems like every week I'm going down there and I'm like, I think the big thing with Mack though is like the impact plays have been keeping him as like a formidable play, but it's this is definitely one of those matchups. I mean, Fred Warner produced like you or I could out there last week. There wasn't very much to talk about. So in terms of expecting your kind of linebacker one, to go out there and just give you that steady performance every week, and you knew the matchup was bad, but still kind of thought he would find a way, and it was a little disheartening. Even tempering expectations with him.
Yeah, you and me both. I don't have a huge amount of Warner, but yeah, where I did have him, I was like, oh, damn, after last week. But hey, it is what it is. We can allow him the odd off game, right? So
yeah, he deserves it.
All right, so let's switch positions and talk about some defensive linemen for a minute. So, who do you like on the defensive line in Week 12 and why?
Tuli Tuipulotu from the Chargers. What's the from the Hangover movie? You never walk away from a heater. He is essentially on a heater. 7 sacks over the last month. In the last 4 games there. So he's got 10 fantasy points or more in 60% of his starts this season. Well, 60% of the games that he's played in the season. Baltimore doesn't allow a lot of sacks, so I can see that kind of hurting a little bit. But I think they are top 10, if I remember, in tackles allowed to the defensive line position. So I think he's got a chance there. I want to say Baltimore's going to be a little, upset after last week. So I think they're going to, try to unleash the Lamar Jackson and Henry run show. So, to keep those pass rushers at bay. Still concerned about Khalil Mack with it being so early in the week. We don't really know if he's going to play. I know he was inactive for the primetime game, and this is lining up to be another primetime game. So, sucks, right? Like, that's the worst spot to be in as an IDP manager if you don't have like an insurance policy with Mack and Tulopu or Bosa same way. Good thing he plays with like 2 of the most injury prone edge rushers that we got in the game right now. So he has the ability to kind of step in at any point. And last thing I had on him was, I think he has 30 pressures all season I looked at from PFF, and 15 of them have been in the last 2 games. So he is definitely, winning right now when it comes to, creating havoc in the opponent's backfield.
Yeah, isn't he just? There's probably no other edge rusher who is in the same kind of form over that last 4 games, certainly in terms of production anyway. And I'm a Chargers fan, John, so I've been enjoying it. That's for damn sure. But the fact that I'm a Chargers fan might surprise you in the sense that what I'm about to say is that I was a little slow to appreciate Tuli. Even after last year, he finished with like 50 plus pressures, 8 sacks, really good production. But I was a bit concerned, more to the point that this year maybe wouldn't be as productive. It's had quite a lot of volume last year, 850 or so snaps, and I was a little concerned coming into this season that he wouldn't be as productive because I forgot. Or maybe was like super hopeful that Joey Bosa wasn't going to be injured every 5 seconds, and didn't anticipate Mack missing a huge amount of time. So, yeah, we've kind of seen both happen so far this year, and Tuli's been getting that opportunity, and he's been, like you say, he's been balling out. He's been so hot. I am a little concerned maybe that if Mack comes back and now Bosa is healthy again, hopefully remains healthy for at least a couple of games before he goes down again, that, what happens at that point, because we haven't really seen that very much this year, both of those 2 guys healthy at the same time. I'd like to think that, Tuipulotu's played so well that he'll remain heavily involved, and I mean more than he was in, I think, the first game of the season, which was one of the only games where we have seen Mack and Bosa both playing at full speed. I'd like to think that Tuli could remain heavily involved, and he deserves to, based on what he's doing. So it's a slight concern, a minor concern, but I do like this call.
I do think too, with like having veteran pass rushers like that, and Chargers are kind of shaping up to be a almost guaranteed playoff team at this point, is potentially keeping those guys healthy, because on top of Tuli, you also have, I think, Bud Dupree there, who's of course having his 800th renaissance of resurgence there. He just kind of always finds a way. So being able to rotate those guys, and if there's one thing that Jim Harbaugh does is coaches defense. So like, those guys are playing unreal defense right now. Is happy for you on that. I did not know you were a Chargers fan, but it's been a rough couple decades.
It sure has. It has. And it was a rough second half last week against the Bengals. Yeah. That was painful to watch, because I knew it would be coming, but I just didn't. I'm a bit of a pessimist. Yeah. lower my expectations to a certain point, and nothing can surprise. But even I was sat there thinking, what the hell is happening? This is like a second half capitulation. Glad to see that the Chargers came out on top. And sorry to any of our Bengals listeners or viewers in me saying that, but yeah, but there it is. So John, I like Chop Robinson this week. I like his outlook. He's an ascending player, really found his stride lately as well. 15 pressures in the last 2 weeks. Only 2 sacks on the season, but 2 of those have come in the last 3 games. And look this up, his 27.3% win rate in those last 3 games ranks 9th amongst all edge rushers. Now, he has switched positions, I noticed, slightly in the last couple of games, spending much more time on the left edge, whereas previously he was spending more time on the right. That kind of coincided with Emmanuel Ogbah coming back. And that week for Chop kind of works in his favor. The Patriots have major issues at right tackle. DeAndre Jacobs, had to check out his name because it's not someone I'm terribly familiar with. He started 3 of the last 4 at right tackle for the Pats. He's allowed 31 pressures, tied for the 3rd most, and the 6 sacks, which tied for the 5th most. And that's despite not even starting until week 4. So I think Robinson could make noise in this game. I think he could be a difference maker for the Dolphins and for his fantasy managers. But this is a small sample size that I'm drawing on. This is a rookie that we don't have that benefit of like a large body of work where we can say, yeah, this isn't just a hot 2 or 3 games. We've seen him do it before. So, John, do you think I'm kind of like I'm looking too much into this? Am I being too hopeful, too optimistic because I have a couple of Chop shares in my own teams, or are you liking what you're seeing as well?
Definitely liking what I'm seeing, but how could you not fall in love with an edge whose name is Chop Robinson? So, but yeah, I like him a lot. These Penn State guys are just like absolute freaks coming out. So it seems like no matter what, you're taking a chance on them, no matter what position they play. But yeah, I mean, he's kind of been, cast into a role that I don't think that many IDP managers or probably NFL teams, thought about in year 1 with Jalen Phillips and potentially Chubb coming back, but that was not to be. And Miami is just, a hot mess to start the year, trying to, turn it on. But yeah, like what I'm seeing there. And like, I'll be honest, I'm lining probably anybody that's lining up against the Patriots, some of those stats you mentioned, I think earlier in the year when I was on too, we were talking about some of the pass blocking grades for New England. And it just seemed like across the board, they were not very good. So yeah, I mean, I like it this week. Is they're giving up a good amount of sacks per game. They can't protect anybody. If anyone's going to get after them, I mean, and the impact that Calais Campbell at like 106 years old is having is insane, between him and Ogbah. And then, you add in a young guy like Chop, it doesn't really matter to me whether they move him to the left or right side. I think, that pass rush win rate, like I really like what I'm seeing from him. It's just, to your point with it being a small sample size, you would like to see a little bit more consistency, but, that's going to come with time.
Yeah, it will. And I was kind of surprised to see that he not only led the team in pressures, but the gap between him and the other edge rushers to be as big as it is. And I'm not pretending that Chop's been super productive and consistent over the course of the season, but getting hot at the right time, was really quiet, didn't get a sack for his first 8 games, but. Yeah, I just feel like he's coming into his own a little bit, and this has got to be the matchup for him, right? As you said, that Dolphins O-line, especially on that right side, is really poor. So yeah, could be a good game for Chop. And yeah, love the name. He was born to be an NFL player, right? So, which defensive lineman are you fading this week?
George Karlaftis, as much as that one hurts because I got some deep shares of him. You wouldn't think about it, but yeah, Carolina's been a nightmare for edges over there. Allowing what I got here, 1.8 sacks per game, less than a full sack at home. Karlaftis, I think this will be the 4th and final matchup against the NFC South this year. He only has 7 tackles total up to this point. He did get a sack against New Orleans, but seems like everybody does. So I don't know if how much I want to credit him for that one. But I had him 60% of his games failing to record double-digit fantasy points, which when you're looking at edge and, I don't want to view him as that way, but it's just, the way Spagnuolo kind of, runs that defense over there. He's sack dependent at this point, and with a matchup that a team that doesn't allow a lot of sacks, it's kind of tough. He's not going to get you 10 fantasy points without a sack. He's kind of proven that through the first 10 games or so. So that's why he's a fade this week. I kind of hope he turns it around a little bit. The defensive snap share is there. He's like the numbers are there. It's just the production's not.
Yeah, right there with you. Talked a little bit about Karlaftis. I forget if it was last week or the week before. I like him. He's a good player. He is a bit volume dependent for me in the sense that he's, his underlying metrics, the pressure rate, the win rate, these are never up there with the best of them. And I think he is a little overdrafted, or has been in recent years, but he gets huge volume, and that is possibly the reason why he's being drafted a little higher than some of his peers, who maybe are slightly more talented, because we love volume, and if he's going to continue seeing that really high volume, then it kind of compensates a little bit for some of that lack of pass rush productivity, perhaps. So, but yeah, like you say, the tackle efficiency is not great, the volume is not great, the matchup really isn't great, and I looked at this. The other day I saw that Bryce Young, like 6% of his pressures that he's seen, that he's faced, only 6% have come from that right tackle position from Moton. So that, I'm right there with you on this one. I think this is a really good call. I didn't appreciate some of how well the Panthers O-line had been playing, I guess, until I saw this nomination of yours. So thanks to you for bringing that to my attention. But yeah, really interesting one. But yeah, right there with you. For me, and I like what this guy is doing, but I'm just not sure if it's going to be his week. I want to talk about Leonard Floyd. Look, he's had a productive year with 6.5 sacks in 10 games, I think it is. But it sounds like the 49ers may be missing Nick Bosa this week. I saw that he's 50-50 to play. He aggravated his hip injury against the Seahawks, and sometimes when we see the best player at the position suffer an injury, we start to get excited about the second and the third tier players behind them on the same team. But this is one of those situations where I'm not really liking the idea of Bosa being out for Floyd's outlook, because we know that Bosa gets double teamed more than most edges. And without Bosa in there, Floyd is not going to see or not going to thrive, I think, in the way that he would be before. And that, I think, also applies to some of the interior guys, Elliott Collins as well. So, yeah, I'm hoping that Bosa does play if I've got Floyd, because he's not going to see any additional volume. Gross Matos, who is gross, kind of saw the... kind of absorbed all of those snaps that Bosa missed when he went down last week. So I don't see anything positive in Bosa missing for Floyd, I guess is what I'm saying. Now, matchup as well. The Packers Jordan Love is just not being sacked very often at all. 8 times in 8 games, once in the last 4. Part of the reason for that is because he's been really good at evading pressure. 8.9% is it leads the league, actually. It's a league low in terms of the pressures converted to sacks. But he also hasn't faced much pressure either, because that O-line has been playing really well, especially Rashid Walker at left tackle and Zach Tom at right tackle. So none of those factors, none of those things I've said kind of favour Floyd. So although he's been productive, John, I'm not expecting big things this week.
Yeah, Leonard Floyd's that, kind of plug-and-play veteran that somehow finds his way to 10 sacks every season, no matter who he plays for, it seems like. But, yeah, I thought this was a really good call-out this week. I looked at that, too. The Packers' offensive line has been very impressive. So, but, yeah, if Bosa doesn't play, which, I don't want to put this on him, and especially you being a Chargers fan, but the Bosas don't seem to be playing through injuries a ton over the years. So, but yeah, and to your point, the downgrade from Nick Bosa to Gross Matos is gross. So, and I want to say he's only been back like 2 games, if that. I think he's been injured most of the year too. So, yeah, bad matchup, and you're going from an elite pass rushing defensive line to kind of a middle of the pack defensive line, and against one of the best pass blocking units. It's kind of tough to get on board there.
Yeah, and I have liked the volume that Floyd has seen. Doesn't even have a 10% pressure rate though. I was looking at this as well. So the volume's good. The amount of pass rush snaps he gets is good, and the production's been good as well. But yeah, matchup and potentially without Bosa, big thumbs down for me.
For sure.
So let's talk some DBs. We're at that point already, John. So which DB is going to make IDP managers happy in week 12?
Well, let's stay with the same game. Stay in Green Bay. I'm a big rookie DB kind of guy. You're right. Like, so I think over the years we've kind of like done some research and looking into some of these guys that, your DBs are the last guys you're really going after in some of these rookie drafts. You're getting them with some of the last picks out here, but like some of these guys are producing at a high level. We saw, Jaquan Brisker, and then that absolutely like legendary rookie season of Jalen Petrie. Like guys like that are just coming in and I mean, quite frankly, like winning you leagues or at least getting you to the dance, I will say. But I like Javon Bullard. It was interesting to see some of his snaps, especially with Evan Williams coming back last week. So I'll kind of start it off with that's a little bit of my concern there. But I do think he was at his best when he was in the slot star position at Georgia. So I would kind of like to see him at that in the NFL. I think he's succeeding at that role and spot. So I got him averaging 6.8 tackles per game in games that he's played at least 50 snaps in. San Fran going into last week was the top matchup for safeties. Seems like everybody seems to feast on them. And then no deep safety in week 11 with Evan Williams back. Obviously Xavier McKinney handles a ton of that, and then Williams cutting into some of his box snaps. But I think when you got Williams coming down to the box, you still got Bullard as a slot. So you're still getting some of those opportunities for the high volume tackles there. And then San Fran allowing top 12 finishes to a safety each of the last 2 weeks. Would have been 3 weeks, but the Cowboys suck so much that, that just is. And then
shots fired.
82% of the defensive snap share this season. And then I like the high volume tackling ability from him there. I know Evan Williams being back is going to cut into that a little bit, but this is a matchup, that San Fran, I would expect some, this to be an over game. So I think there's going to be some high scoring, I think we'll see some, the ball moving up and down the field, especially through the air. So excited about his chances, and he's been pretty consistent, even with some of the box snaps turning into slot snaps and things like that. He's still, found a way each week. So if I'm wrong and Evan Williams ends up, kind of cutting into the point where Bullard is taken off the field, I apologize in advance. I don't see it though.
Well, if it does, at least you're still set with your rookie safety, I guess. You just substitute one for the other, but yeah, at least I was thinking about this kind of change in Bullard's role, and if he is going to lose snaps in a certain role and gain them in another, I don't hate the idea that he would lose box snaps and gain them in slot snaps. Do you know what I mean? So if we were talking like he was playing super deep, and I will preface this by saying I care a little less about safety roles than I used to back in the day. But yeah, if his role is gonna change, for him to go from being a sort of a boxy guy to being sort of a slot guy and overtaking Keyshawn Nixon in that role, then I don't hate that. I still like him. You, I think my main concern, and it's a small concern right now, is what his role looks like this week, because he was down in that sort of 71% range. I think I'm trying to find it now. 72% last week. So, it's not ideal. But what's it going to look like this week going forward? We'll have to wait and see.
Yep.
So, my guy here is Grant Delpit. And I know he's not kind of the shine's come off of Delpit now. A few years ago, maybe we were kind of excited about what he could become. We kind of know who he is now, and it's not a stellar player, but he's still playing every down. In fact, the only Brown safety that we can say that about, right? Yeah. 10% or 10.7% tackling efficiency, ranks 25th out of 104 safeties who have played a minimum of 100 snaps this year, and he's been heating up. He's had at least 7 tackles in each of the last 3 games. His matchup this week, it's interesting, right? So going back to pre-Russell Wilson, the Steelers were a really poor matchup for opposition safeties. Now Russ Wilson's in at quarterback. They've been one of the top matchups in the last 2 games. I was looking at what the opposition safeties have done. Kyle Hamilton and Darius Washington combined for 18 tackles. Jeremy Chin and Quan Martin combined for 19. So since Wilson's taken over, this has become a good matchup. So I think this is a case of a player who's kind of hitting his stride, playing against a team who have become a really good matchup for opposition safeties. I like the way those 2 things have converged this week. So I think this could be another week of a good production from Delpit.
Yeah, I love Grant Delpit. Been a big fan of him since LSU, and then that there's the Browns linebacking core outside of JOK being pretty good this year. Prior to the injury, has always been like a dumpster fire. So I think you could always rely on Delpit to kind of have a little bit more higher volume than maybe you would anticipate. So my biggest issue with him has always been just kind of like those inconsistencies in some of those games where you're looking for some of those high volume tackling games, and you get some of those duds in there, but you're getting that with any player. We just spoke about it with Fred Warner, who's the best of the best. So but yeah, I do like his consistency over the last couple. Having 7 tackles, if you could tell me that I can roll out a safety every week that's going to get 7 tackles and hope to get an impact play or a tip ball interception or something like that, I'm taking it every time.
Yeah, and that's that's solid production right there. And then you hope for a big play too, here or there. I know that that's not really Delpit's forte, but now that I've said that, you watch this week. Johnny's going to go out and get a couple of sacks, a forced fumble, interception, return 1 for a touchdown. I've called it. So tell us which DBs IDP managers should be avoiding this week.
Unfortunately, because I love him. He's had a long career and, a couple championship rosters I have him on. But Harrison Smith, the Vikings defense, just, a lot of mouths to feed, specifically in that secondary with Harrison Smith, Josh Metellus, and Cam Bynum, who was, electric last year. Matchup, not great. Bottom 10 matchup. Harrison Smith, also something I looked into, which was kind of surprising. He's been relatively terrible against the Bears over his career, last couple years of his career, I should say. He's I think I have him as he has not produced a 10-point game since 2021 against the Bears. So it's kind of surprising. I mean, a lot of different offenses and offensive coordinators over that time and quarterbacks and things like that. So a little surprising, but yeah, not a great matchup for safeties. It's really wild too with, you like the mouths to feed piece on it is like, I think it's Cameron Bynum and Harrison Smith both have 34 tackles on the season, and Josh Metellus has 35. So it is literally like, seems like you're just rolling the dice every week on what guy is going to be the guy. You look at their stat sheets, and plenty of them have a double-digit tackle game in there, or at least a high tackle game in there, but predicting it seems to be a tough matchup, especially with the way Josh Metellus is kind of used in that Flores defense. You're not, doesn't seem like you're getting true consistency. But yeah, it's, sad week for Harrison Smith. Maybe he breaks out of that funk and, gets that double digit point, like you said, because he's on my dislike. He'll probably, have that big week. But, yeah, I'm off Harrison Smith this week, but, I do, there'll be better days.
Yeah, well, maybe not. He is getting to. He's really old now. We were talking earlier on about Hicks and Walker being sort of getting up there in age, but they're still a couple of years shy of Smith. And like you, I hate hate talking negatively about Harrison Smith because he's been so goddamn good for so long. I've loved watching him. He's kind of one of those players that made me fall in love with the safety position. So yeah, it's kind of it hurts a little bit, stings a little bit, doesn't it? Talking negatively about him, but yeah, like you say, it hasn't been very productive. He hasn't played particularly well by his own standards either. It's like 32 safeties that have got 10% tackle efficiency or above rate this year, and yeah, none of these Vikings guys are amongst those 30 safeties. So yeah, all the more reason to be concerned. With the age, yeah, it's just, yeah, right there with you. It hurts to say, it hurts to admit, but yeah, right there with you. So my dislike at DB this week is, and it's not that I feel like I need to preface this. It's not that I don't like him. I just don't like him as a starter this week, and it's Kamren Kinchens, and he played really well in week 11, and that's kind of the reason why I'm mentioning him before a lot of Kinchens fans jump on my back. Played really well, was massively productive, 8 solo tackles, in fact, forced fumble, interception, and his snap share has been growing steadily for a 3-game stretch from in recent weeks as well, but he had to be ultra efficient this week just gone to produce as he did because his snap share dipped again to 54%. His performance on the weekend, it would be kind of surprising if it didn't lead to a bigger role back there. At the expense of who though? Cam Curl, Quinton Lake, probably Curl. I would think, despite the fact that he was the big name addition. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Kinchens did command a larger role, I guess, because of how he played. But it's not something that I feel the need to gamble on, I guess is what I'm saying, John. We've got a bunch of safeties out there, a bunch of DBs that are all playing full time, even during a bye week like this one with 6 teams out. I feel like we're not that desperate that we've got to be playing a guy that's going to be on the field for only half of his snaps. So with that said, his matchup is also poor. Even after Jeremy Chinn's big day against Philly last week, the Eagles still rank among the worst matchups for opposition safeties in terms of tackle volume. So if the fact that he might only play half the snaps is enough of a concern, or isn't enough of a concern, then the matchup just makes this a no-brainer for me. So should I be more excited about how he played, John? Should I be entertaining the idea of starting him, even though he only played 54% of the snaps?
It's tough. So I am a Miami Hurricanes football fan. So Cam Kinchens was one of my, kind of favorite, Tyler Nubin, dethroned him, but was one of my favorite, safeties coming into this class. But I do view Kinchens as, I don't see him as like a hybrid type player. I do see him on the back end there, right? Like, and what the Rams are doing is like completely just reinventing the fact that you don't have to use linebackers that are good at football, and then they're just going to draft all of these safeties. So Jalen McCullough is another guy, right? Like Quinton Lake came out of nowhere. The guy's been a top 12 DB all year. Cam Curl, we kind of come and know. Took him a little bit to adjust there, had a couple games, but then, dealing with the injury. And then you bring in, McCullough, who I think had a couple games there, interceptions and touchdowns where he was highly, highly efficient. And then Cam Curl comes with like 100-yard pick six and then follows it up a week later with another interception. So like the efficiency they're getting from their DBs, if they could get any of that from the linebacker position, I think a lot of us would be pumped. But yeah, I see it as Cam Curl, right? And like, as much as I love Kamren Kinchens, like Cam Curl's better than him. Like he's just like, and he's a highly prized free agent that they brought in. I don't see him losing those snaps. I see potentially Curl not playing 100% of those snaps, but like that's not. And then again, to the matchup, like it's not good. Like I'm watching last Thursday as Jeremy Chinn's piling up tackles, and I'm like, wait, what's going on? He's not supposed to be doing this, right? Like, so where's Bobby Wagner? But he's 100 years old too. So like, but yeah, I'm with you. As much as it pains to fade one of my rookie DBs and from Miami, it's not a good matchup. I do I am intrigued on what the Rams end up doing as the season progresses back there with what's going on. So
Mm-hmm.
I want to see what happens there. And, as luck would have it, you get a DB that falls late in the draft and he goes to a team that has, two locked in starters, right? So that's just kind of the way it works sometimes.
Yeah, and it just, no, the fact that you're a Hurricanes fan and you're still saying that maybe Kinchens shouldn't be starting above a guy like Curl. He didn't expect him to. I just wonder whether or not he might eat into his snap share a little bit. We'll have to wait and see how it goes. But yeah, it is interesting to see what the Rams are doing with their and we call them loosely safeties this year. it's kind of intriguing, isn't it? And yeah, like you say, we'll have to wait and see how it unfolds when the things shake out. But yeah, interesting how it's looking over there. Lake was on fire, wasn't he, earlier to start the year?
Yeah.
That was kind of fun to be on that wagon if you were. I kind of missed it.
The prize week 1 and week 2 waiver wire ad there, and has just not stopped all season. It seems like it's just been the Kamren Bynum of 2024, if you will.
Yeah, right. It's nice when it happens. Just rarely happens to me at DB, especially. If there's two guys, I'll end up picking the wrong one early in the season, and that's the way it is. Okay, John. With that, we have reached already. Feels like it's flown by the end of the Week 12 IDP Preview episode. Let's do a quick recap of our nominations, though. So John's likes for Week 12 were Anthony Walker, Tuli Tuipulotu, and Javon Bullard. Mine were Jordan Hicks, Chop Robinson, and Grant Delpit. John's dislikes were Divine Deablo, George Karlaftis, and Harrison Smith, while mine were Mack Wilson, Leonard Floyd, and Kamren Kinchens. So, John, I'll be watching eagerly to see how these guys get on over the weekend, as I always am. But can I just say it's been an absolute blast doing this with you. Thanks for coming on. My man, you killed it. I knew you would, because I've heard you on other shows. This is our first show together, but I've heard you on other shows before. So, thank you for coming on and doing your thing.
Very welcome, sir, and I appreciate it. Hopefully this isn't our last one. I had a lot of fun, and it definitely flew by. So.
For sure. Before we wrap things up, though, I want to talk about some of the killer content you've been delivering over there at Dynasty Nerds. So tell us what you're up to this season and where our audience can go to find you and your content.
We have 2 weekly articles coming out at Dynasty Nerds by myself. I'm kind of, heading, directing, leading the IDP team over there. Have been for a few years now. So we have a waiver wire article that drops every Wednesday, which are your top ads, 6 players at all your key positions: defensive line, linebacker, and defensive back. And then our start sit article drops every Friday. That is, appropriately titled The Blind Side. So we have I do something special for that one, as we've kind of modified as the season went on. Most people know me. I've played in a lot of hardcore IDP leagues over the years. So defensive tackle and cornerback premium are kind of ones that I typically get dragged into, because, why not make John start 2 defensive tackles every week? So I do provide some streaming options there for both cornerback and defensive tackle for, those of us that are a little bit more on the hardcore of the IDP side. And then, covering injury news. And something new we did this year was the IDP tip of the week for in the start sit article, which is kind of some IDP roster management stuff, a quicker just kind of like bullet point of some things, have some things for daily roster management as you approach your rookie drafts, as well as some stuff in there for like commish tips for those of you that would like to run your own leagues going forward. And I know it's really hard to find IDP leagues with trusted people and longevity and all that kind of stuff. So kind of throw some of that stuff in there too, to my big thing is really just encouraging people to play this brand. A big thing with Dynasty Nerds going on is really getting a lot of the staff into an IDP only league coming up this year. So that is not IDP only, but getting them to play IDP, and just to kind of show them the ropes. And as we're producing the content, more and more people are becoming intrigued, and that's really what it's all about for us, right? Like, we just really, it is nice to see people kind of dip their toes outside of the offensive only world when that's all they've ever known. So really excited about that. And then lastly, I definitely want to make sure we plug, we did do an IDP, 1-round IDP mock draft. I know it's pretty early, but really wanted to get some of those names out there for the people that are, maybe have started, acquiring those rookie picks around like the week 6, week 7 mark, trying to see what they're looking at for this 2025 class. Got together a couple, like to call it the band, typical guys that I, analysts that we've, kind of shared thoughts with over the years. Got some, all of us did 2 picks. There were 6 of us each, did 2 picks. Definitely be on the lookout for that. We are going to produce a 2-round mock as well, and probably within a month. That will also be up on the site. So really looking to kind of get, those names out there, some stuff out there for people, so that they're a little bit ahead of the curve for those, those managers that are a little more hardcore and want to prepare for their rookie drafts early. We want to make sure that we have all that content out there. So
you've got a lot on, Jon. Love it. I love what you're doing in terms of trying to encourage more people to take up IDP and just give them an opportunity to, as you said, kind of dip their toes in the water and get a sense of what it's all about, because it's a whole new world. Everyone that's listening, go and check out Jon's work. As you've heard on this show tonight, he's a star, and his work is as good as it gets. As always, a shout out to our audience, whether you're tuning in on Spotify, on Apple, or watching us on YouTube. We appreciate you. Please subscribe to our channels to make sure you don't miss out on any of our future episodes of this, our guest interview feed, and all the other killer content that we put out as well on the regular. That just leaves me with wishing you success in your Week 12 matchups, and I'll see you again next week. Bye for now.
This was the IDP After Show.